joining us tonight, and I am excited to have Rick Allen here, and he is the president of MedSend, which is one of our partners here at BlackRock. And our staff, Dawn, myself, and Carrie got to hear Rick, and a couple of weeks ago we said, "Hey, you got to share this with our church." And so we're excited to have him here with us. If you don't know Rick, Rick was an elder at our church years ago, and then somehow Pastor Steve convinced him to run our Stanford campus for 10 years, Rick?
8.
8 years, and that was amazing to have him bring the gospel to my hometown of Stanford, and it was great having him there. And then he moved down south and took with him his role with MedSend. And so, again, you'll hear a lot more of that. He has a wife that went down with him, and he has 3 amazing daughters. And I don't know if we'll get to hear about them at all in this, but I had a couple of them in youth group when I was our high school youth pastor. And so that's Rick. The other thing about Rick is that he is an Eagles fan. So tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, you will know he will be in front of the TV watching as the Giants dismantle his Eagles. So I'll be watching with my son. Somehow, Rick, my son, became a Eagles fan.
Oh,
and so
bless
it
you.
is pure torture
right.
for me to watch the Eagles because he loves the Eagles. He puts on their garb and all that. So you and him might have a good night. And then I think that's about it. So, Rick, how about you take over and present to us just about what MedSend does and the privilege it is to bring the gospel to the world through what you guys are doing.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And you've raised your son right. I'm proud of you. I can't see everyone's face. I don't know everyone who's on, but to those of you who I've had a long friendship with, I want to thank you for joining us. And for those of you who don't know anything about MedSend, thanks, and I hope that you'll be blessed by committing your time this evening. So, yeah, I have a long history at BlackRock, but MedSend has a history just a couple of years longer. So MedSend was actually birthed at BlackRock Church. And that happened in the late 80s, early 90s. Officially, MedSend became an organization in 1992. But Dr. David Topazian and his wife, Deirdre, who attended BlackRock, were the founders of Project MedSend at the time, and they used BlackRock as the launch pad for Project MedSend. And the missions board at MedSend was the first supporter. And to this day, we consider BlackRock Church to be MedSend's home church. So it's a nice long history that we have together, and it is a real blessing to be here with you tonight. And I hope that by the time I'm done, you'll be excited to be a part of what MedSend is doing throughout the world. I'm just going to put up a PowerPoint and share it with you. And let's see if we can get this going. All right. So, Jeremy said a little bit about my background and history, but my wife and I arrived in 1993 to BlackRock. I was born and raised in Eagles territory, just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I was with a software company that IBM had acquired, and they transferred us up there. And until we moved south in 2015, we attended and worked through, at one point I was on the staff at BlackRock. So it's a long history. I served on the missions board. I was very involved in men's ministry. I was on the elder board, campus pastor. So my heart is, and a big piece of me will always be at BlackRock. I love the church. I love the people. And it's just been a real privilege to be a part of what BlackRock has done. You appreciate it more and more the further you get away. You recognize, particularly in missions, the history of missions at BlackRock is known throughout the world. And when I tell people that I had attended BlackRock for an extended period of time and was very involved, everyone recognizes it. So you are involved in a wonderful church that's known around the world. And it is a real privilege to partner and continue this partnership that we have had since even before the founding of MedSend. And I just want you to know that this partnership literally saves hundreds of thousands of lives a year. And I'll explain that in a little bit more detail, but people around the world, every continent, are impacted by the partnership that we have and the fact that, you know, BlackRock launched MedSend into the organization that it is today. There is, you know, we call it preach and heal, and it is a model that Jesus built for us as he went throughout the world. So there is very few ministries outside of healthcare that can have the level of impact that global healthcare missions have. And BlackRock is right at the forefront of it. And I really do appreciate our partnership. I am going to drop down into a short video, just to set some context for you. I want you to see this. I know that we are all struggling with COVID-19. I happen to be blessed because we're fine as a family and everything is okay, except for the fact that I have cabin fever. But I do want you to take a look at this. And Jeremy, what are you seeing here?
Well, we're seeing your screen, so we're ready.
All right, great.
This is Kalukembe Mission Hospital and the 2020 malaria epidemic during the 2019 COVID epidemic, simultaneous. This is a 60-bed ward with over 90 patients. In the hospital, we have over 100 patients, over 100 pediatric patients. We've had 66 deaths from malaria just in the last 3 months, over 1,500 diagnoses. And we've actually lost count of how many kids are there right now. I asked this morning how many kids there were, and they weren't sure because they said there's so many distributed on other sections. So we are here with lots of overflow patients. And this is probably the worst we've seen in the last few years. So again, this is Kalukembe Mission Hospital in Angola, 2020. Let's not forget the malaria and other diseases that can affect the rest of the world.
It's interesting to watch that because it really helps you to recognize that these pandemics exist throughout the world, and these healthcare missionaries have people dying in their arms year-round. And they come in waves in some of these places where the pandemic just continues to hit. So we're starting to see it from the West. We get a taste of what's going on in the rest of the world, and you can see the level of quality of the healthcare. Now, this is an extreme. They're not all as difficult as what you're seeing in that video. There are hospitals that are in better shape, but almost all of them, every mission hospital, I can say pretty much everyone that I've seen, is at capacity or overflowing. There are people on the ground, on mattresses, waiting to be seen. It is a dire need for healthcare in the world today. It is truly amazing what you see and the level of care that is missing through most of the world. So what I want to share with you is, and I'll go back to share my screen here in a moment, but is a little bit of perspective on what we have been seeing recently. So I want to walk you through a little history that will give you some context, I trust, and you will be able to see essentially what God is doing in the world today through global healthcare missions. So again, I'm going to share my screen. So what the World Health Organization, which is a division of the United Nations, has come out and said that the world is 7 million healthcare professionals short of their minimum ratio of patient to healthcare professional. Another study says that half of the world's population cannot obtain essential healthcare services. So what that means to us is that we have a resource in the Christian community that is welcome everywhere in the world. A professionally trained healthcare professional that has gone to our medical schools, nursing schools, and other allied health schools are literally welcomed everywhere. Now, what that means for us is that we have a new opportunity, and let me explain that to you. With this, essentially, I'm going to walk through kind of a brief history of medical missions. And in the middle 1800s, an individual called Peter Parker went and he was able to access the innermost parts of China. So he was invited in to go to these areas where foreigners were not allowed. You see, back then, China had trading cities along the coast, and you could not penetrate in beyond those coastal cities to get access and mingle with the Chinese people. But because Parker was a healthcare professional, he was invited to come in and do that. And he went into the inner parts of China, delivered medicine, learned a lot about the folk medicine that the Chinese were using. He came back and went to the University of Edinburgh, and he essentially said, I know the way into China. And the University of Edinburgh agreed with him and started to train up physicians specifically for medical care. And it exploded into, God just used it in incredible ways, so that what you actually saw was a movement that had incredible access throughout the world. And one of our biggest partners is SIM. I'm sure many of you know them. And one of their founders was a medical professional. And one of those reasons is because they were able to access its Sudan Inland Mission. They were actually able to get inland with healthcare professionals. And it started an enormous movement that the Holy Spirit used for about 100 years. And the reason was access. They were welcomed and they could get to parts of the world where other missionaries couldn't. And then there was an explosion in Western missions that was just absolutely amazing. And I call it was essentially the age of infrastructure. Incredible infrastructure got built during this time. And we start to see where individuals would literally hack into the jungle. They would build a hut. The hut would turn into a clinic. The clinic would turn into a hospital. The hospital would turn into a teaching institution in one person's life. I mean, it was truly a movement of the Holy Spirit because incredible things happened during this period of time. And hospitals started to get built up at a very rapid rate. And then what happens after that is we see, going into the 1960s and the 70s, a decline in healthcare missions. Two things happen at the same time between the 60s and 70s. One is that the complexity of running hospitals overwhelms the mission sending organizations. They need doctors, nurses, expensive equipment, pharmaceuticals, everything that you need to run a hospital. And it just overwhelms them. So they start to step aside. The second thing that happens is what I call the modern evangelical missions movement. And a lot of the major donors started to demand accountability. They wanted to know how many people were being saved by the dollars that they were investing. And it was very difficult to tie in how many people were being saved with the delivery of healthcare, right? And so they really were not able to bring these two things together. So missions leaders, to a large extent, stepped out of healthcare as a primary focus of evangelical missions. And it declined to about 10% of the missions world. So this model, which initially was the leading edge of missions, accessing parts of the world that had never been accessed before in the name of Christ, goes into a very steep decline. And then it goes into what I call the maintenance years. And the maintenance years were from about 1970 through the early 2000s. Now, unfortunately, in this area, healthcare missions only represents about 10% of all global missions. And it is kept alive primarily as a mercy ministry, not as an evangelical strategy. Innovation occurs during this time. MedSend occurs. There is something called community health evangelism, or CHE, and that is a very basic form of helping people determine the health benefits of washing their hands and maintaining their homes, and basic cleanliness occurs. So there is innovation. Some hospitals continue to be built, but primarily it languishes as a mercy ministry in the minds of most missiologies and people who are involved in missions. We started to see this slight increase. So MedSend comes along in 92. But in around 2005, we start to see this slight uptick in the number of individuals who are coming to MedSend for a grant. And, it reminds me that I haven't really told you what MedSend does. So if you're new to this, you might not be aware, but what we do is we help a healthcare professional who has graduated from college to go to the mission field by taking their educational debt and making the monthly payment as long as they stay out and serve in the mission field. So we start seeing more and more young people coming to us, looking for these grants, willing to go serve throughout the world. And then at the same time, what we have been seeing over the last several years is a closing of the world to Western missionaries. There's a lot of things that are impacting it, but one of the primary things is the ability of countries to get control of their visas. So in the past, if you've traveled, you have a passport and you would arrive at the passport station. They would stamp your passport and you would enter into their country. They might issue you a visa of some kind for some period of time. But they really never had total control. It was a regional or local where the airport was located. But with computers and database software now, they actually, if you've traveled recently, many countries, they actually scan your passport and they're getting control of the visa situation, and they're creating profiles. So they will create a behavioral profile of a business person. So when they give that visa, they recognize, all right, this kind of behavior in and out and how they are conducting themselves is a business person. It's a typical business person. They fit the pattern. They're also doing the same thing with missionaries. So countries that don't particularly want missionaries, particularly from the West and specifically from the United States, now are building these profiles, looking through their database and identifying individuals who fit a profile that would be a missionary. And it's typically going in and out and other various behaviors, how long they've been in the country. And we're seeing visas being revoked significantly. People who have committed their entire adult life to communities are being asked to leave. And I believe that a close friend, Bill Barker, is on this call tonight. And Bill's brothers committed most of his entire adult life to missions in China. And they started calling him down to the police department for interviews on a regular basis. And I'm not sure if he's still there. Bill, you can maybe do use the feature there for sharing. But I know that he was under threat for being asked to leave after dedicating his entire adult life to a specific community. So what we're starting to see, and what the sending agencies like an SIM are starting to see, is the revoking of visas and the expelling of US and other Western European missionaries. However, we have not seen any healthcare professionals who have had their visas revoked. Now, if you reflect back with me to the shortage, the severe shortage that the World Health Organization has identified, we're 7 million healthcare professionals short of their minimum standard, and they're expecting it to go up to about 25 million within the next 30 years. So you've got this increasing shortage of healthcare professionals, and it is giving us access. Now, if you look at this chart that's in front of you, you'll see what I believe is happening today, which is that God used healthcare missions very early on because healthcare professionals could access parts of the world. And today we see the same thing happening. We see young people coming to us in ever greater numbers, looking and willing to go. And by the way, the world is increasingly becoming more difficult and dangerous. And these young people are willing to step into these roles in very difficult places. We see the sending agencies on the other side recognizing that healthcare professionals are one of the few professionals that they can get into these locations. So we're seeing this, it really is a regeneration of healthcare missions as a leading edge of evangelism. And it is an amazing thing to see, because most of it has happened during the 12 years that I have been here at MedSend. Now, during that time, and through the history of MedSend, we see sending out of over 600 healthcare professionals to serve in the world. And we have, even this year, it's been a difficult year, but individuals are still coming to us. So we've had 28 new grant recipients. We've had 35 grant renewals. And what that means is MedSend offers a grant in 4-year increments. And then on the anniversary of your 4th year, we renew for another 4th year. And the real fruit of the MedSend ministry is individuals who commit to live in community and to transform community over a long period of time. It is a real challenge to do what we try and do in a short term. So when there is a renewal of a grant, it means that the person has been there at least 4 years, and sometimes 8 or 12. And it's the real fruit of what MedSend does, because it's a commitment over a long period of time. And it's interesting, because I know I have heard people who were there when Dr. Papazian left BlackRock and first went out to try and raise money for MedSend, and people told him he was crazy, that no one would pay for a doctor's debt. As when it first started, his objective was limited to physicians. Today, we're much more broad in terms of our definition of healthcare and who we offer a grant to. But back then, they thought he was crazy. Well, I can tell you that we have awarded over $22 million. And right now, we have several $1 million a year that year after year, we are providing to free up individuals from here to serve throughout the world. And 5 years ago, well, in 2013, the MedSend board approved a new program, really for the first time in MedSend's history. And that is for us to come alongside of individuals who are in Africa or Asia and help them to get specialty medical training. So this could be surgery, pediatrics, OBGYN, there's orthopedics. So any number of specialties. These programs tend to be between 3 and 5 years, and they are generally located at a missions hospital, and that's where their training occurs. MedSend looks for partners who do 3 primary things. One is a high quality of medical education, and that's not necessarily compared to the West. It is regionally appropriate. Training individuals with the complex equipment that we train physicians here makes no sense, because they don't have it available to them generally. The second thing is intentional spiritual development. We really believe that healthcare can be a primary means to evangelize. And we want the individuals that we're training not to think of themselves as doctors, but to think of themselves as missionaries to their own people, using healthcare to spread the love of Jesus Christ. And essentially, that's what they're doing. The third one is leadership training. We want to see leadership training baked into the curriculum as well, because if we do this right, if we select the right candidates for these scholarships, we will be taking the men and women who will be running their community hospitals and national healthcare systems in the next 20 years. These will be individuals who will be centered and grounded in Christ, leading their national systems. And we look forward to that day. We're already starting to see it, where the most recent graduates, all of them are staying in areas of high need, and they're making an impact on their community and their nation. So to date, we've given 45 of these scholarships to individuals, and we've had 17 graduate. So we're very excited by the success of this program and the direction that it has taken. And we are looking forward to see how God uses it to expand beyond where it is today. I noticed the other day that when MedSend was this age, I checked the number of years that the National Scholars Program had been in place versus when Dr. Papazian was running it, and they were almost identical. So we might see a day 20, 25 years from now where we have hundreds of national scholars who have graduated and are serving their own brothers and sisters. They're training up their brothers and sisters in healthcare, and they're making significant impacts in healthcare within their countries. So I want to pause here and just give you a chance to send any questions that you might have. I would really encourage them. Every question is a good question, so feel free to ask. Jeremy, do we have any?
Yeah, so one is, how do we allocate the money that BlackRock gives to MedSend?
Yeah. So we've been asked by BlackRock to specifically send the funds to fund the individuals who are in what we would call closed countries, primarily Muslim majority countries. And of course, you know, we serve everybody, right? This is not, there is no religious test. We serve Muslims, and they recognize the love that we have for them through the delivery of healthcare. And many of them are willing to listen to the love that Jesus has for them. You know, it's interesting what we see happening. The strategy that we see happening today is not necessarily trying to turn the healthcare professional into the evangelist, but rather to have a local evangelist, someone who has been well trained at the clinic or hospital. Now, throughout most of the world, people equate their physical health condition with their spiritual health condition. It is not unusual for a healthcare professional to ask a patient, how is your relationship with Allah or with God, right? With the spirits. That is not unusual. They expect that conversation because they intertwine their spiritual and physical health. We separate them here in the West. So it's very natural for a well-trained physician to start to ask about their spiritual condition. And, you know, particularly in a Muslim context, it's very easy to say, would you like to know about Isa, Jesus, who is in your book, and how he overcomes the spirits that you believe are making you ill? And let me introduce you to Mohammed, or whoever is outside the door, the local individual who is an evangelist, and he can help you understand how Isa heals. So it's very powerful, and it's an expected conversation, and a healthcare professional can enter into it very easily. So that's how we, you know, and also, by the way, BlackRock has recently been supporting the Nationals program. So you are helping nationals to become physicians and impacting their own countries. And I can assure you, we are going to see incredible fruit from this.
Yeah, that gets me excited when I know that we're on the national side, that we're supporting Christ followers who are going to reach their own nation and generations. And so that's great, Rick.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Another question is, if you don't have any student loans to repay, how can medical professionals still serve within MedSend?
Well, that's a good question. So I made too many assumptions, I'm sorry, when I started, because I need to explain how MedSend's organized just a little bit. So we really play a small but very strategic role in healthcare missions. We relieve and remove educational debt as an obstacle for going to serve. Now, I like to think of the way this works as, I tell people, we are wholesale, not retail. And what I mean by that is, think about a hub and spoke. So on the outside is the missionary themselves, and they're a trained healthcare professional. They want to go to the mission field. They then apply to a mission organization. So if you're familiar with missions, we actually have 50 partners. Just about everybody in the United States who sends healthcare professionals is a partner with MedSend. Dr. Topazian built it all up over the years that he was running MedSend. And these are SIM and AIM and InterServe and IMB, if you know these companies, Frontiers, Pioneers. It's all the big boys as well as a whole bunch of small ones. And the missionary applies to them. They approve them as missionaries, and then they come to us for financial debt relief. And that's the only way they get to us. So they have to come through a partner, meaning wholesale, before they can apply to MedSend. Now, I give you all that. I trust it's somewhat interesting, but it also shows that if you don't have educational debt, you don't need MedSend. So if you're someone who is considering healthcare missions, you can go right to a mission sending organization, apply part-time or full-time, and be accepted by them and go serve. So it's there. The need is everywhere. If you're considering it, it is global. The scope is everywhere outside of the West. You are needed. You will make a difference. I guarantee you that you will be blessed if you make the decision to serve.
Rick, how long can someone stay supported by MedSend? Is it 4 years? How long can that go on for?
Yeah, so it goes on until we pay off your educational debt or you come home from service. So we have been blessed through the years to have paid off almost 200 individuals. They have stayed out in the mission field long enough that we've relieved their entire educational debt. But a number come home, life happens and they have to return home. And when they do, we hand them back their payment book, so to speak, and they pick up paying on their educational debt again. We have a lot of alumni that have been paid off in full and are still serving and making incredible impacts throughout the world.
Rick, does MedSend provide any training, emotional support for all those that you support?
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Jeremy?
Yeah, does MedSend provide training, emotional support for all those that you send to the field?
Oh, great question. So I mentioned that we are seeing a large number of individuals being willing to go. We've seen records set of people that we have approved. In this generation, the Holy Spirit continues to call young people into healthcare missions. I will tell you that their vision is very different from their grandparents and their parents about what they're going to do when they get out there. And when they do get out there, it is very difficult. First off, it's very low resourced. So they get out there and they recognize very quickly that half of their education is not applicable to the environment that they're in. They don't have the high-tech equipment. They don't have hardly anything to work with. Right now, at one hospital, they've run out of oxygen. They have no oxygen. Now, imagine that in the middle of COVID, no oxygen. So it's very low resource. So it makes it very difficult. So you've got a generation who's willing to go. Most of the people that we deal with are young. So what we've been seeing, unfortunately, but it deserves the truth, is an increasing level of burnout amongst these young people. And they're coming back more and more wounded. And you have to remember that the world is becoming increasingly difficult and dangerous. More of them are going, and it's a new generation with a new vision. And they are really being hurt out there. So what we're trying to do, and to answer the question more specifically, I wanted to give you a little background, is that we are using our influence, because we give away millions of dollars every year to these sending agencies. We're also using some of our finances to come around these individuals that are willing to go, sacrifice themselves, and in some cases taking young families to these difficult places. And we're working with them in 3 areas. It's before they go, as they go, and then on the field. So before they go, we are actually working with the Christian Medical and Dental Association to have individuals who have MedSend grant recipients who have come back be trained as mentor coaches. And when you get a MedSend grant, you're assigned a mentor coach who has already walked in the moccasins, so to speak, right? They have been out there, they have been serving. So they know what the problems are. They know the reality, and they can help you. So when you accept the MedSend grant today, you're actually accepting it knowing that you have to touch base 24 times with your assigned mentor coach, once a month for the first 24 months, for the first 2 years. And that person has been coached and trained to help you deal with what you're going to face. The second one is we expect an annual report from our grant recipients, and we have added to the annual report a stress assessment. And when we see that the stress indicators are high, we actually have a counseling organization that will ring an individual up. We've got it red, yellow, green. And if it's red or yellow, they will actually do a Zoom call in a confidential way using different technology, but they will do a video call with the individual, asking them if they would like to have some counseling sessions. So we're really trying to help them cope before they go and as they're arriving, and then over time. And then the third element, while they're on the field, we are going to initiate a retreat. We're calling it the Med Retreat, where we help individuals. We're going to bring pastors, we're going to bring mental health professionals, individuals who have already served and understand the stresses, and we're going to bring them together. And every other year, we would like you as a MedSend grant recipient to attend one of these. And we're going to focus on three things: your professional life. How do you deal with a baby dying in your arm every day, right? Women treated in a way that you would have never imagined people treated this way. Excuse me, that one gets me every time. Your spiritual life. Because what happens is you start to doubt God. When you see what these individuals see, you need to have your spiritual life reinforced. And then the third one is relational. This is very difficult, particularly if you're married or have children. But if you're single, it's different stressors. These are difficult and high stress environments, and they're impacted at the relational level. And I can tell you, the attitude generally is these individuals are there to serve God, right? They're there to be God's hands and feet, delivering the love of Jesus through healthcare. So when they have a choice to go home or to stay in the hospital and save someone's life, they stay in the hospital. But that line never ends. So what happens is their personal life gets decimated. And, you know, mom or dad, and I say that because half of the people that we support are female, and they have husbands and children with them. And mom or dad is back at the house, and they're saying, we're falling apart. We're not adjusting well. Things are not going good. The kids aren't well. And they have to make a decision. Do I go home and somebody dies? Do I take a vacation and more people die? And they need to deal with that on a very regular basis. So we're helping them to cope with these stressors while they're as they're preparing, as they're going, and as they're on the field. So thanks for asking that question, whoever did. But this is new for MedSend. Our board just approved this about 9 months ago. So we're just starting to get it underway.
That's great, and I think that's one of our concerns as a church and the missions board is to make sure that everyone that we're sending, we just don't send and we hear from them when they come back to a conference, but that all the time that we know that they're being cared for. Love that you're caring for them, and I know that our team at BlackRock is always reaching out and just helping people through, because as you said, it is stressful, it is hard. And we want to support them. Another great question here.
Questions, Jeremy, but I did see one from Alona, and I just want to give a shout out. Alona was an incredible part of the MedSend team for a number of years, and just say hello.
So a question there is from the national program. So when you're trading nationals, one of your focuses is on helping them get training so then they can be a leader within that facility. What's the average cost to train a national to do that and to get trained through MedSend's program?
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna answer that in the context of what it's costing today to get a doctor through med school and then residency. So it is costing anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 for that process to occur. Now we're a little different here because when you finish med school and go into residency, you're actually working and you're being paid by the hospital. That is not the way the system works throughout most of the world. That is the US model, but most of the world works under what they call the English model, which is you actually go right from undergrad into medical school. So you're accepted on the front end into a 6-year program. There isn't this graduate and then apply to med school. You're accepted at the beginning. In your freshman year, you're heading into med school. Now, the challenge is that oftentimes it's all academic. So you can graduate as a doctor without ever having touched a patient. It's all academic. So you see where these specialties, and what happens, one of just a couple of things occur, right? Someone graduates, and worst case scenario is they give up. They don't feel equipped to really become a physician and to go out and to encounter patients. And that's the worst case scenario because they're so desperately needed. Or you go out and, there's bad outcomes for the first couple of years. The third option is really, it doesn't happen often enough, but it's designed to be a mentoring model. So right from the beginning, this English model was designed for you to graduate and then be mentored by another physician. Well, in these low resource areas, there's just not enough. People are overwhelmed by the demand, so they don't mentor. And that's where the bad outcomes actually come from. So that's what part of the reason why we are coming alongside of them in that way. Did I answer that question?
How much does it cost to train a national?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yes. So thanks. So what we're actually paying for is these residency programs, and we're paying for the cost of the education, books and labs, and a small stipend. And it depends upon the program. The least expensive program is $15,000 a year, and the most expensive, which is specialty surgery, is $25,000 a year. And that is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So at the high end, the most expensive is $125,000 to teach a skilled surgeon. Here in the United States, that is about $400,000, about $350,000 to $400,000 to get a surgeon fully prepared. So it's significantly less expensive, but it is expensive. It's not cheap. I mean, you need a lot to support. It's not just the individual. You need to support the program and the infrastructure that supports them, trained nurses, consumables, infrastructure, everything that you need, particularly when you're dealing with surgeons.
Great. Which type of healthcare workers are eligible for grants? And then I would just add mine is if anyone on here or knows of somebody who wants to talk more about this, what can they do?
Yes. So we have, as I mentioned, Dr. Topazian initially had hoped that he could get a dozen physicians, and a couple of hospitals were really in jeopardy of closing. So he was determined to get a few physicians out the door. Well, as you saw in the earlier slide, we're up over 600 individuals now. And it is expanded way beyond just physicians, and the world needs every one of them. So nurses were the second area, but now all of the ancillary health care professionals are essentially covered. So nutritionists are covered. They're desperately needed, as you can imagine. Physical therapists, I mean, you could ask me an individual question, but I would say that the vast majority of healthcare professionals are covered. So that's the answer to the first question. And the second question is, how you get to us, which is really through a mission sending organization. And if you're interested, you could go to the MedSend website, medsend.org, and you will see a list of all of the organizations that we partner with. And any one of them is able to take your application and then submit it to MedSend for consideration of a grant. MedSend, because of that process, what happens is we approve a very high percentage of the applications that come to us. There's two primary reasons why you might not get a grant. The first one is we have a high degree of financial stewardship, and if you do not show financial stewardship with your loans and how you spent your money, that could be a problem. The second one is that you really never shared your faith here. Why would we ever expect you to share your faith there? So if you're considering, applying for a grant and entering into global healthcare missions, really consider how you can make an impact here in the States first. Share your faith. Get comfortable doing it. There's lots of opportunities in healthcare and outside of healthcare. By the way, MedSend, I haven't mentioned it, but MedSend has had about 10%, so that'd be around 60 people right now, who actually have served or are serving today in U.S. inner city Christ-centered clinics. So we have a couple in New York City. We have a number of them in Philadelphia and Chicago, Nashville, Louisville, San Francisco, all over the country. These inner city Christ-centered clinics are delivering healthcare to their community, and we will support you to go to one of these clinics.
Rick, the last question here, and multi-part. How has the virus impacted your fundraising and ongoing ministry? And then how can we support you in prayer this next year?
Thank you. So it's interesting because healthcare missions is a bit of a niche, right? I mean, it was around 10%. So we haven't had a lot of visibility. It's been increasing over the years, particularly as people see that the healthcare professional can get access to parts that are closed to every other missionary. But it's such a time as this, right, where a global pandemic brings everybody's attention to healthcare. And what that has done for us, quite honestly, is put us in a good financial position. I need to be honest with this. Of course, we would appreciate your donations, and we appreciate the churches, and love our partnership. But in all honesty, this pandemic has been financially a good thing for MedSend, because people are now starting to understand. We don't have any context of what goes on throughout the world here in the West. I mean, we can complain about what we're exposed to here, and you saw that video, and that's a reality. So now that we understand what is going on, I think people are turning their head, particularly missions-minded people, and saying, how can we support healthcare missions where you're delivering the love of Christ and you're earning the right to speak into these people's lives. So that's been great. So I would say how you can pray for me. You can pray for my wife. I know several of you know Linda, because I'm home. So, MedSend has had me traveling quite a bit over the years. It's one of the reasons why I stepped away from my role at BlackRock Long Ridge, is because I needed to spend more time on the road, and I have. a couple of years ago, it was our 25th anniversary, and I was on the road 40 weeks out of the year. So for a couple days at least, but I did some kind of traveling and at least away one night. So all of a sudden, I'm back in her domain. So you can pray for Linda and that she can put up with me at this. I'm absolutely certain that Susan is having the same problem with Larry. Can you imagine Larry being home and 24/7 access? My goodness, this poor woman. Well, my wife is facing the same thing. You can pray for my grandchildren. I have 2 grandchildren now, a boy and a girl. Carly and her husband Tino have provided that, and they live about 12 minutes away. So Linda is in her glory, but you can always pray for the grandchildren. And, for MedSend, that we would make appropriate decisions, that we would be good stewards, that we would listen to God, that we would, just offer everything up in obedience and prayer, that we would be found faithful. It's always been my prayer for the leadership at BlackRock that they would be found faithful, that they would protect the ministry, that their lives would be a reflection of their commitment to Christ and to the church. And I just ask for the same prayer for the ministry of MedSend. It's not just me. It's all that we're doing. We're still a very small organization in terms of people. There's 11 people at MedSend, and 4 of them are part-time. So it's a small organization, but you can pray that each and every person would be found faithful, that they would be looking to protect the ministry.
Rick, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's amazing to hear, Rick, what you guys are doing and how we're bringing the gospel to the 2 billion people who have never heard it. And that's what gets me excited about MedSend, is that you, by what you just talked about, are allowing us to partner with you and those that are getting these grants to go to the places where the gospel is forbidden to be talked about. And we get, through doctors and nurses and others, bring the gospel and talk about God as we're helping them to get healed. And just so thank you. We're blessed to have you as a partner. All of you who are on here, we're going to be emailing you because we know you signed up through Realm. Ways that you can sign up for MedSend's newsletter. We'll also be sending you in the weekend and next couple weeks some more videos that Rick has given to us that we'd love to share with you, just about who they're supporting, and I think it'll inspire you too. And also your opportunity, if you want to be a prayer partner for MedSend, that will sign you up and get you connected so that you can be praying for them each and every week. Thank you so much, everyone. Larry had one parting thing. He asked a question. Have you read any of those books behind you, Rick? You don't have to respond to that, but that was his last jab at you. And again, thanks, everyone. We really appreciate you being on here. And we can't wait to see you as we continue to open up church in the next couple of weeks. So thanks, everyone. Bye.
God bless you. Bye.